Welcome. We're glad to have you here today. This is a special webinar. We don't usually do ones like this that are outside of our expertise at the system office, but we're excited to have you here for the funding opportunities from the North Carolina State Refugee Office. And our special guest presenter is Dr. Scott Phillips, who is the Refugee Coordinator at the Refugee Office at the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. We also have from our own team, Dr. Chanell Butler, who's the Director of Grants at the System Office. Some of you might know Dr. Chanell Butler because she was, for a long time, a CCR Director at Catawba Valley Community College. And actually, I need to move to this so you can see their pictures. So there's Scott and Chanell. And then last but not least is my friend for decades and colleague from Wake Tech, Lisa Poplowski, who we all affectionately call Lisa Pop. She is the English language training IPS at Wake Tech. And Wake Tech IPS is a special term they use that means instructional program supervisor. Is that what that means? Lisa, something like that.
Yep.
And she's in charge of the Refugee Outreach Project at Wake Tech. And this webinar was all Lisa's idea. And without Lisa, it would not have happened. She's done a lot of work behind the scenes, even though she's not going to be presenting today. I wanted to make sure we gave her credit for all the work she's done. So everybody thank Lisa for doing this. And we will be recording this as always and posting it to the PD archives. I'm a little behind. I think there are 5 things I still need to post to the archives, but hopefully it will be up by next week along with everything else. So that is the end of me talking. So I will stop sharing so that Dr. Phillips can take over.
You're muted, Scott.
There we go. Unmute. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited about this opportunity. I was saying before the meeting started how big of a fan I am of the community college system in North Carolina. So always looking for ways to connect either in this job or the jobs I've had previously or just in my personal life and family life. So I appreciate all y'all taking the time to come and listen to me ramble for a little bit about the refugee office and what we do. And I'm going to apologize. My mouse's battery is dying. So we will do the best we can. Okay, so again, I'm Scott Phillips. I'm the State Refugee Coordinator. I oversee the North Carolina State Refugee Office. And we are based in the Department of Health and Human Services. Our main goal is to promote health and well-being, self-sufficiency, and long-term integration for OR eligible individuals, which includes refugees and other eligible populations, which we'll touch on in a minute. We are 100% federally funded from the state or from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and we, in our process of trying to do health, well-being, self-sufficiency, stability, integration, we cover a really wide range of activities. In addition, we also work very closely, and this last bullet point I think is very important, is that we really work to deliver the services, but also to build a welcoming infrastructure. So resettlement. So it's definitely been in the news the past year. We've definitely seen fluctuations in numbers from, which over the past, I've been doing this 11 years in North Carolina, and the numbers go and ebb and flow on a regular basis. But resettlement is written there, but in short, it's providing an opportunity for people who had to flee their home country into a third country. We can go into a lot of details. It's a complex process, but I'm not going to bore you all with all that part. So who are we talking about? So refugees, asylees, Cuban Haitian entrants, certain Amer-Asians from Vietnam, victims of human trafficking, Ukrainians with humanitarian parole, non-Ukrainian individuals displaced from Ukraine, special immigrant visa holders from Iraq and Afghanistan, Afghan special immigrant parolees, Afghan individuals with special immigrant conditional permanent residency, and Afghan humanitarian parolees. This list has more than doubled in the past, I would say, 4 years. We have added more populations that are considered Office of Refugee Resettlement eligible. And it's also allowed us to engage with our partners, a wider group of folks living in the communities in North Carolina. So what do we do? So this is kind of reiteration of that first bit, but a little bit more detail. So supporting our refugee support services program is our main program that we operate, and that's honestly what we're talking about funding wise today. Is it helps to focus in on economic independence and self-sufficiency, and addresses the issues around barriers to self-sufficiency, etc. We look at self-sufficiency as a holistic term, not just that you got a job and you can pay your bills, but have you got a job, you can pay your bills, you're feeling like you're part of the community, you feel safe, you feel stable, and we all know, like, getting a job, if you're not able to access the doctor, or your kid's not able to access school, it's not going to be very easy to get a job and all that. So we recognize it as an all interconnected kind of thing. That's honestly where organizations like Wake Tech, who is one of our contractors, and other providers around the state that maybe do not do direct employment services, are integral to the part of getting households towards that idea of self-sufficiency and improved health and well-being and integration. So here's some of the service areas we work in, and I'm definitely not going to read all these. The ones highlighted in yellow are the ones that we feel could be a good match for community college system. Some of them are a little bit of a, you have to tilt your head to get there, but it's all something that I think would be capable, could be done within the community college systems. And again, since we're recording, y'all will get this, and we cover quite a wide area of services. So one of the key things that we're looking for when we're looking at funding opportunities is, how do you collaborate with local organizations and coalitions? How do you reach out? How do you engage the refugee communities within the area you're serving? It's an incredibly important part of this, and I would use Wake Tech as an example. In the past, a lot of Wake Tech's students came from the 2 resettlement agencies that are in Raleigh, and they would refer them over to Wake Tech. We also see a lot of people, because word of mouth, people learn about Wake Tech and they're like, I want to learn.
Jennifer asked Jillian and I to be on this webinar specifically.
So it's a very central part, the coordination and collaboration that we look at when we're looking at possible grant opportunities. It also, and to be honest, I think we're all, facing some of the same challenges, given more limited funding for the foreseeable future, is that coordination and collaboration, resource sharing, et cetera, is going to be incredibly important to demonstrate a sustainable program. So with our application, and we'll talk about I'll talk about dates now. So we are hoping to post an RFA for refugee support services funding in early autumn. Hopefully September, but we have to wait on the federal government to provide a couple of documents for us. Once we get that posted, we will, go through the review process, et cetera, and then the contracts we're posting for RFA for in autumn will start July of 2027 and run for 1 year. So in the application, very basic, straightforward. Everybody, this standard application stuff. Clear, concise description, purpose statement. How does it fit within the program funding goals? Demonstrated clear understanding, research policy, impact goals, and outcomes. Now, I will be honest, I'm a huge outcomes person versus outputs. If you're like, hey, we had 25 people come to class, it's like, well, that's good. What was the outcome of those 25 people coming to class? What was the impact? What was the there? And so we really want to focus in on outcomes as well as how do you get to those outcomes. A couple of other areas is in the application, you have to tell us which region or county or counties you would be serving. We are trying to strategize funding to cover the entire state, all 100 counties. And so we really need to know where people are going to be operating and what they're going to be doing. How many people do you think you could serve during the contract period, and what are the activities proposed? And we provide a lot of this information in the RFA of this is the things we're expecting people to do, and this is how we expect people to do certain things. But then we also leave a lot of space for creativity and innovation as well. Describe the goals and outcomes, how you will accomplish, and what are the plans to continue the project. So, if we provide, $100,000, but we can't provide $100,000 the next year, is there a plan to continue the program on? I recognize that's a huge ask, but, definitely an area we look at to see the sustainability of our funding and how it can be leveraged to achieve different funding as well. So our grant cycle for this application is going to be for 1 year, July 1st, 2027 through June 30th, 2028. And we should, fingers crossed, be possibly extending contracts for 1 year, but it would be based on the funding that we have as well as the performance of each contract. And just on that, the performance stuff, when you have a contract with us, there is a lot of technical advising and support that our office provides to help achieve the goals or to provide training or to make connections and all of that. So we are definitely here to provide the funding, but then also make sure that funding and you and all the other partners are able to work together and serve the OR eligible residents of North Carolina most effectively. I'm going to stop sharing and I will turn it over to Dr. Butler. But thank you all for listening to me for a little bit.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. I am getting this up now.
And we will have time for questions after Dr. Butler.
How's this look, everyone?
Looks great, Chanell.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep it brief and just give you all some tips for successful grant applications. Some of the thoughts that I will share, you can apply to any federal grant, and some of the tips are information will kind of expand on what Dr. Phillips shared with you. So this is just a little bit about me. Like Dan already mentioned, I became Director of College and Career Readiness. Back then it was known as Basic Skills in January 2012 at Catawba Valley Community College. And I joined the System Office in July of 2024 as the inaugural Director of Grants. It's been a real journey and an adventure. The office is obviously located in Raleigh, but I am stationed still in Hickory, where I lived. And my areas of expertise, if you ever want to chat, are higher ed leadership, competitive grants of various kinds, whether that be federal, state, or private, inclusive excellence, organizational transformation, or project management. And my personal and professional passion is empowering others, following the golden rule, and making a difference. And I'm a proud NYU alumna, as you can see in the picture. So how can I help you? What is my purpose here at the system office and also today with this presentation? So in general, my role is here to assist with leading, developing, and or writing successful competitive grant proposals for the North Carolina Community College system. I'm here to support and empower institutions in their pursuit of grant funding. The wish is for us to increase the amount of funding to the system office overall. And I also work very closely with the foundation, but that is not who I work for. I work for the system office and also work closely in partnership with the foundation as well. I love to share opportunities for grant funding with you all. If you are not on my listserv, please, I have some colleges that are having trouble with the grant listserv through NCCCS, but the issue is coming from local IT services. So if you're not on that or you're unsure, please reach out to your local ITIS people and get on my listserv. I also want to be a resource and a connector for all of you to other grant and funding resources throughout the state. And if anyone wants to work with me to lead or develop consortia, that's another big part of my role. And like I said, I'm physically stationed in Hickory, even though the office is in Raleigh, but my virtual door is always open to you. And I will give you my contact information at the end of this presentation. So probably, as Dr. Phillips alluded to, you all have noticed or been concerned with or read about federal grants and the changes that have taken place there. So federal grants have changed regarding their turnaround times, regarding the number of opportunities that we are seeing available to us as higher education institutions and state institutions. Oh, I apologize. Let's get back to this. I'm trying to minimize your lovely faces so I can see my own presentation. There we go. Okay. So with the decrease in the number of opportunities and with the competition increasing and the faster deadlines, that is putting more pressure and more stress, as we all know, on anyone that works in the grant arena. And that means for us that we have to put the best proposal forward that we possibly can in as quick and efficient of a manner as we can. And that will be each organization's best bet to bring in dollars. So that's what the spirit is when I'm giving you all these tips, is to help make you as the most competitive I can help make you to have success and get an award. So the first step, once you found a great opportunity like the State Refugee Office opportunity, is to make sure that you communicate out within your organization to make your intentions known that you are interested in this particular grant and what your needs will be in order to successfully pursue this grant. So that is a common thing I see at organizations, a common concern and problem is that maybe multiple pockets of your college or your nonprofit organization are interested, but the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So it's really important that if you find an opportunity you feel your organization is a good fit for, to let your leadership know, communicate upwards and sideways, so that you all can make a decision about which department or individual is best with that organization to go ahead and apply. And that will also give you an opportunity to build relationships throughout your college, perhaps with areas you never had before, maybe the business office, maybe marketing. IT would probably need to be involved depending on the grant. So that will allow you to also build new relationships throughout your community and your college to put together a team. Identify your key players that are needed for the particular application and clarify which person is taking on which role of the application, because as you all know, with federal and state opportunities, there is a lot to do and a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross. So you definitely want to be clear about who's responsible for what. And ideally, in a perfect world, I know not every organization or college has this opportunity, but if you do have the opportunity to have a designated role or designated office to centralize the grant efforts, that would be best practice. And once again, I understand that not everyone has that capability. And that's also what I'm here for if you ever need someone to think through possibilities of how to make this happen with a smaller college, call me up. So continuing along that thought, another great idea is to make sure you have an organized file, whether it's digital or physical, although I think most of us definitely need digital nowadays, of your successful proposals. Keep those templates and that boilerplate language to make your life easier when you have another grant opportunity that pops up, especially the blurbs about your organization and the history of your organization and the reliability of your organization. Save that because a lot of that can be copy pasted and save you time on the next opportunity. There are a lot of free resources out there for training your faculty and grant on how to do grant writing and project management. I know NC Cord offers a lot of opportunities. If you're not a part of NC Cord yet, they offer trainings and conferences that will help you with budgeting and grant writing. Then there's also your track. You need to track your funding metrics. So how many number of submissions are you creating versus how many awards are you getting, et cetera. So those are just some overall ideas for your team at your organization when you're getting involved in the grant process. Then to make a competitive proposal, here are some things you're going to want to make sure that you do. The first thing is make sure you're telling a compelling story. Everybody knows grants are not the most exciting, or people often tell me that it's the scariest thing for them. But on the opposite side of that, as someone who's also been on the side of reading grants and awarding grants, you want to make sure you're really getting across the mission and the heart of what you're trying to accomplish to the person who's reading it and is going to make that decision about awarding or denying your proposal. Make sure it has plenty of data to back up this fabulous story you're telling. Make sure that you're following the instructions such as font, margin sizes, page limits, word counts, formatting, because there are a lot of times with state and federal opportunities that you can miss out on being considered by a simple technicality, the wrong color ink, the wrong signature, the wrong font size. So please pay attention to instructions. In order to make your story very clear and cohesive, you're going to want to state the problem, offer your organization's solution, give some outcomes that you hope to achieve, and the impact that those outcomes are going to create in your community. And that will really help make your story more compelling. Sometimes grant writers get stuck on, oh, this is the problem, and you forget to tie up what you're going to do about it and what the impact of that solution is going to be. So follow the story from beginning to end. Remember that sometimes less is more, because there's people reading piles and piles of grants, and you don't have to go on and on and on. You just have to meet the minimum and say what you need to say. Again, about the data, evidence to show the need that you have, and anything that you can show that demonstrates your past success, your past performance with your students or your clients, definitely utilize that. This is one of my favorites. If you've been to any of my presentations before, you know I always drill about the fluff. Grant readers are not interested in fluff, especially if it's obvious that it came from AI. That gets under committee's nerves, I can attest. And so definitely make sure you're telling this great story about your impact, but don't rely on AI to write this for you. It is certainly okay to use AI to help you. And I use AI to help me with all kinds of things, but make sure it's your voice and not a robotic voice. People can definitely tell. In your narrative, use SMART objectives. Make sure that what you're promising you're going to pull off is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. If you're going to serve 300 students, how long is it going to take you to serve them? Are you serving 100 students for 3 years and each year 100 students? Make sure you're being very specific about your objectives. And last, but very importantly, make sure that your budget matches your narrative. That is a very, very common error that causes people to lose out on awards. Is someone may read your fantastic story, and then the money that you're putting in your budget does not align with what you said you were going to do inside of your narrative. So please make sure that the expenses in your budget match the goals of your narrative. Also, moving on to evaluation and sustainability, you want to demonstrate that you have a clear evaluation plan, whether that's qualitative or quantitative metrics. Show how will you know that you've succeeded with your project, and show how you're going to track that data and that progress. Doesn't have to be super fancy, but it does have to be concrete. And funders love to see that they're not just funding some hot trend you're going to try for 6 months and throw out the window. Funders love to see that whatever they're investing in with your organization is something that has potential to last for years and years, has potential to go on and continue after a very brief grant period. So if you have anything to demonstrate that you have ways or ideas or thoughts of how to keep a project funded over the years, definitely share that in your narrative and show how your project is exciting and unique. The flip side of that, we're going to talk about a little bit more, is do not overpromise. You want to sell it, but you don't want to overpromise because that will come to bite you later. So don't do that. Avoiding the common pitfalls with your grant team. Lack of communication or confusing communication. It really does take a team. Even if one person is writing and doing all that work, you're still going to need the input and the thoughts and the cohesion with your colleagues. Make sure you have the blessing of your leadership with the ideas that you have. And make sure that everyone's in alignment. Hey, this is what we're promising we're going to pull off. Do we all agree to this? Does anyone have concerns that we may not be able to do this? Make sure you communicate with the people that you need that are going to sign your grant. I know for me, when I worked at Catawba Valley, that was a tricky one for me, chasing down people to get signatures. So I'm sure there are other people that have had that issue as well. So give yourself as much time as you can, in being honest, though, that sometimes the grants don't have a lot of turnaround time. So if you give your leadership a heads up, hey, this grant's due in 2 weeks and I'm working on writing it right now, but in 10 to 14 days, I'm going to come knocking and need your signature. So just kind of give them a heads up. And again, can't overstate enough. Do not oversell or overpromise, because it's worse when you do that. Get an award and then you're not able to actually deliver the success that you promised. The risk of that is having to return funds. The risk of that is destroying your relationship with a funder who trusted you to use the funds a certain way and therefore does not want to fund your organization in the future. It's just not worth it. Be honest, and obviously you want to be persuasive in your grant and narrative and make it attractive, but you don't want to flat out lie or overpromise things that are not realistic to achieve. Again, don't rely too much on AI. It can be helpful, but don't let it write the grant for you. We already talked about the budget and the narrative. It is perfectly okay to recycle old materials from previous proposals, but please be sure to customize each grant to the exact funder, the exact project that you're working on. You don't want to just copy paste everything the same. You can use it as a structure and update it. Make sure your objectives are not vague. And when you're developing your budget, if you have to choose which direction to go, I always feel that it's better to slightly over budget rather than slightly under budget. If you under budget, you may cut yourself off from the opportunity to actually pull off the objectives you wanted. If you slightly over budget, your funder can always say, I'm not giving you 50,000, but I will give you 35, and you still got the 35. So I always say be a little bit more generous on what you think you're going to need, because it's worse to get stuck with an operating budget that won't work for your project. Okay, so and Dr. Phillips, please do interrupt me if I misrepresent in any way. Just wanted to share specifically about the big picture of this opportunity. For myself and my colleagues at the system office, we feel that this could help expand the ESL services across the state. This grant could help provide funding to serve refugee populations and eligible populations where resettlement exists. There are funds that will be available for specific programmatic goals, but please keep in mind to nonprofits and community colleges that you should focus on leveraging institutional offerings and supports that you already have, that are already existing, rather than building up something from scratch. Because obviously building something completely new from scratch will involve a lot more funding than may possibly be available. So look at expanding what you already have. Take the time to examine what exists at your organization that you can augment or dovetail from what already you have in place. And take a minute to look at your existing programs and the barriers that your population has to overcome and the opportunity you have to offer new services that may not currently exist. So now that you're here with us and you're learning about this opportunity, start laying the groundwork now. You can start having conversations with people at your college and let them know that this exists. You can look at the different levels of potential support. Do you have a large refugee population or a small population? Do you have designated existing staff already, or do you need one? What kind of classes and systems set your college apart from others? You can look at beginning now to collect data from your region or population that will help you when the RFA is released. And that will help you be ready to jump into the process, because the more information you gather now, when it does come out, will make your job a lot easier. Again, so look at your number of students, your demographics, your refugee population, and the projections that that population may take in the upcoming years, so that you know who you may anticipate serving this grant opportunity. When you're starting to think about your budget ask, look at what funding do you need to pull off the services you want to offer, the staff, the textbooks, software, computers. Do you need professional development and conference registration, travel fees? Some challenges that you will want to look at as soon as possible are your own institutional processes and how will it integrate with this grant process and what the grant is asking for. How do your financial reports work and your business office with payroll, your procurement, the way they process stipends, contracts, and travel for your faculty and staff. Those are things, if you're not aware of, would really help to be aware of before the RFA comes out, so there are no surprises for you, and you'll understand what the process would be like to get your needs met. To kind of piggyback off what Dr. Phillips stated earlier, the RFA, which stands for Request for Application, should be released hopefully in early fall of this year. You'll have about 2 weeks to submit your letter of intent, and the State Refugee Office will provide training before the submissions are due. So keep your eyes and ears peeled out for that so you can attend the training. And submissions should be due sometime in late 2026. The State Refugee Office will probably need about 2 months to evaluate and choose award recipients. And then the contracting process should begin in early 2027. All documents, their State Refugee Office and the colleges together will prepare all required documents, and that'll have to be input into the North Carolina contracting system. So that's just a big picture of the application cycle. Again, look at who is authorized to sign your documents and agreements. Is it your president? Do you have some authorized organizational representative? Is it your CFO? Do you need community representatives, such as county commissioner or your board? So find out the policies at your organization so that you have that person lined up and ready to sign. So for your post-award thoughts, once you receive the grant, make sure that you are staying in compliance with what you said you would provide. There will be monthly reporting required, data input into the refugee information system, performance reporting and monthly outcomes. And of course, like any grant, you'll have to have your invoices and your backup documentation to show the way the funds are being utilized. And then, of course, your organization will have their own internal reporting as well. So that's something important to keep in mind. And that is it for my portion. You can email me, butlerc@nccommunitycolleges.edu. This is my office number, 919-807-6986. But email is usually the best way to get me. And if you need to talk by cell, that's fine as well. You could shoot me an email and I can call you from my cell phone as well, or if you prefer to text. I prefer just that you email me if you want my cell rather than me plastering it here, but I welcome that as well. I communicate a lot through my cell phone. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you to Lisa, Dan, and Scott. You guys have been an awesome team.
It's been great to work with all of you. And now is the question time. Did we have any questions? There is something in the chat. Oh, a long time ago. Sorry, Karen. We expected this to take a lot longer than it took. So does anyone have any questions for Scott or Chanell or Lisa?
I'll just step in from the provider perspective. Chanel really detailed a lot of what it looks like on the doing the work side of things, but each college is quite different, and the populations that exist in each community are also quite different. So, for example, if you're in New Bern, and Scott can attest to this, the population that is currently residing and moving to New Bern is quite different than those that are settling in Charlotte, perhaps. So I suggest that you kind of dig in on your data. Scott, I also welcome your input for some more information for them about where the population really is.
Right. And I think I always tell people, we work, there's SRCs in most of the states. So State Refugee Coordinator. So I work with them a lot of times. We in North Carolina are a bit of an odd duck when it comes to resettlement. Many states have one or two main locations where everybody goes. We are spread from Murphy to Mandino. So we currently, that we know of, have folks that are being served in 85 of the 100 counties. The majority, and not a surprise, is that corridor from Raleigh to Charlotte via Greensboro. We also have a big pocket of folks that we work with in Asheville, New Bern, and Wilmington, as well as around Fayetteville, Wayne County, down that way. And to Lisa's point, different places have different population demographics. Mentioned New Bern, it's a lot of Burmese that have been resettled in New Bern, and then when somebody else is resettled, if they have a U.S. tie or a family member or a cousin, they will be placed near that person for extra support. So you tend to start seeing trends. Asheville has a large Ukrainian population that has really grown in the past couple of years. And then various things like changes. Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Charlotte are kind of the mishmash of a little bit of everything. But it is, we talk about this in two ways. One is, in Raleigh, there's a lot of people that would fit in this category and come to class or take advantage of the services. But then when we look at some of the counties that may have smaller populations, we also think about how important it is to support them so we don't have people falling through the cracks. If in Raleigh, there's other services they may access or ways that they can get there. But I think it's definitely one of those things where we are trying to balance as best we can to hit as many people as we can, just to provide that sense of connection and ESL. And I see a question from Karen. We can, yes, you can serve people outside of the college service area. But I would, it gets to be tricky at that point. So, I mean, I would, and I think y'all have been funded in the past, Karen, but I think, I'm not sure, I can't remember what was it since I've been here. But I think, yeah, it's probably better to look local first and then expand out as possible. For example, I think Wake Tech on their contract with us has 5 or 6 counties, but 95% of all the folks are Wake County. Yeah, that's our residents.
Karen, is there something specific that you have in mind with regard to people that are outside of your area?
I guess I was just asking because it seems to me if Wake Tech were to be continuing what they're doing, is my area going to be considered less competitive for it, because we're geographically pretty close. And I know there's a desire to kind of get the whole state covered. And I think getting the whole state covered, there's a certain strategy there about maybe some regional kind of thinking with that, because I'm assuming you're not going to have 58 awards.
I would like to. I don't think my contract staff would like that, but but yeah, I mean, one of the things we have talked to non-community college providers about is partnerships and looking at a collective application for multiple organizations. You typically still have to have one organization as the lead, other people as subcontracted out, but you can leverage a lot of centralized resources that way, and it helps to expand that money a little bit. I know for Durham, I mean, there's Durham, but there's also you're working in Chapel Hill in Orange County, and that is definitely one of our areas that we see a number of people coming in. But also, I think one of the big things we like to see is that, and I think this is important, and it sounds cheesy, but for a lot of the folks that we serve who have fled violence and had to leave their home and come to the U.S. and are struggling to figure out how to live their life, knowing that somebody out there has their back and knowing that there's systems in place to help to serve them beyond just the refugee resettlement agency that put them there, that there is the community colleges, the school systems, the public libraries are an amazing resource. All of this stuff works together to serve these residents in North Carolina. And, what we can do with the funding might not be as effective as what y'all already do on the ground. We're just there to help support what's going on. I mean, Wake Tech would be doing an amazing job with or without the money that we gave them.
Okay, so it sounds like there's not a discouragement.
No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and Janine, I appreciate your comment too in the chat about only recruiting in Wake County. Yeah, that's also helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and Karen, you have a lot. I mean, you have a lot of refugee agencies there that it may be really beneficial for you.
Yeah, no, we have agencies very close, so that is a great point too. Thank you.
I would piggyback on what Janine had to say as well. With the growth of the area moving more towards Burlington, I think there are opportunities that Wake Tech, we simply don't serve those who have to drive, a great distance to come to an in-person class. We have some synchronous online, but I would tell you, the bulk of folks are here locally. And, Wake County, maybe Franklin, maybe, you know, a little bit of the Morrisville side, that kind of thing. But the drive is significant and the population is growing and also going further out from our metro areas. And Scott can speak to this even more. I know he had some counties that, he was seeing the rent going up and the apartments becoming unavailable. And so there are populations that are getting pushed farther and farther into areas that we do not serve. So I would encourage you, Scott, also to share some of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen over the past, like, let's say 4 years, more folks being resettling in Johnston County as opposed to Wake County, or a lot of folks going into Randolph instead of Guilford. So we're definitely seeing people move out. Gaston County is starting to be a location because Charlotte's just too expensive. Asheville is always expensive. So, but I think that's, when we're looking at those patterns, it's really important. And one of the things to think about what Lisa said about, it's a long drive in. And I think this is an important distinction. There is the ability to do virtual, asynchronous, or synchronous ESL education, which is great, especially for folks that may be a long ways away or find transportation barriers to get to class. I also think, though, that one of the benefits of the community college is all the other stuff when people go there that they see and they're like, oh, I am sure I'm not even going to try to make up a number, but there are a number of people who've gone to ESL at Wake Tech and then go, oh, I would like to do that CNA course or, this. And so they're there and they get the sense of environment. It's also a welcoming opportunity to be in place. But further to the thing I talked about with welcoming infrastructures and welcoming communities, one of the best ways to address people that may be refugee or immigrant adverse is to provide an opportunity for interactions and to hear the stories from people. And by our folks coming physically to the community colleges, it has been we definitely have seen relationships develop between folks. I think it's an interesting thing for people. I say this a lot. So for those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, in Benson, which some people will not say is Eastern North Carolina, but I was on the east side of 95, so I claim it. So we, I grew up there, and this has informed my work since, I was, my entire professional career, is that sometimes when we start talking about specific populations and slicing and dicing populations up, we oftentimes forget the connectivity between all those different spots. So when we're talking about refugees learning English, that's one thing. But when we're talking about refugees finding a pathway to a career, or refugees finding affordable housing, or how to get transportation, or access to specialist care when there's not that many doctors in an area, that's not a refugee and immigrant issue. There's slightly different things with that. It's a class issue, and it's a rural versus urban issue, and it's all that. So as we can build those partnerships across it, actually, I really hate the phrase, about raising all the boats, but it raises all the boats if we can do it. Somebody needs to come up with a different one. I don't like that one. Rising tide raises all boats, whatever it is. So we we definitely encourage as much connections as possible because it is, when we're looking at this long term, we are hoping not just to have people have a job and live in North Carolina, but to live in North Carolina. And that's really the critical edge of what we do. So yeah, sorry. I can babble on about this like for the rest of the day if you want, but I don't think you want to hear me do that.
They're mentioning in the chat that people are not willing to drive as much because of the cost of gas right now.
Chanel,
Yeah.
go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, we're definitely seeing a difference around the willingness to drive, and for a lot of our clients who maybe work in the gig economy, DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, etc., it's you really are having to price it out now whether or not it's worth it to do.
Scott, could you talk a little bit more about the specifics of the process, like your perceived timeframes and turnarounds and things like that? And I understand, but could you explain a little bit about the scope that you expect?
Right. So, as I mentioned, hopefully early autumn, we will post the request for applications. And in the request for application, we will say, what is the cap for funding for these applications and how many we expect to fund, how many contracts we expect to have across the state. That is a piece that's always in flux for us. It depends on federal funding. So we're currently waiting to see exactly how much we can do and how it'll work out. Because there's a cap, it does not mean everybody should apply for the cap. If you think you can get something done for $35,000 and the cap's $100,000, you don't need to apply for $100,000. But to Dr. Butler's points, make sure that you put enough money in there that you can actually accomplish what you say. Don't think like, oh, we're going to lowball this and we're going to get picked because of that. Because if you do get picked and you lowballed it and then you can't do it, then it's going to cause challenges later on. So we will post the RFA and it will have that information. But one of the other things that's really going to talk about, and we're changing our RFA presentation system formatting and everything this year. In the past, we have been fairly open to more ideas. We've said, hey, in the overall scope of how do you create economic self-sufficiency, tell us what you want to do with our money to accomplish that goal. As time's going on, our funder has become a little bit more prescriptive, and so therefore we're having to pass on that prescription. Like, I want to see, we have to do A, B, and C, but we also, if people want to do G and K and stuff like that, as long as you're still doing A, B, and C. So it will be a little bit more, we are looking for funders and to do A, B, and C. We will probably talk about counties for services. And again, that Wake to Mecklenburg Crescent is the majority, but to the point I made earlier is we also want to kind of get into some of those areas where there may be populations that don't have a lot of focused targeted services. So that'll all be written in there. And then, as I mentioned earlier about collaboration and coordination, we really want to see that as much as possible for the reasons I talked about earlier. I will say to Dr. Butler's point, make sure the budget and the narrative match. it is it is definitely. I've been reading grant applications for 20 something years, and it is always a pet peeve of mine if they don't match. Also, spell check. That's, straightforward thing. I'm a horrible speller, so I have to spell check everything. So, you know, but I think when you're writing it, to Dr. Butler's point too, is tell us why. Like, why is this important? Why are you pursuing this funding? And I mean, the reason, it might be part of the reason that we really need this money to hire some staff. Yes, but I'm less concerned about that. And why are you doing this? Why do you feel like you're the right person to do it? Why do you feel like there's a need? So definitely aim into the why and lean into that. And then of course you're going to have to do the how, because you can just tell us why, because it's the right thing to do, but I need to know how you're going to do that right thing. So when we're doing that, we will lay out within the RFA our template for what we expect applications to look like. They will have word and page limits, because again, we get a lot of these and do not want to read through 100-page documents. We know that there is going to be duplication across all of our applications around problem statements and needs, and we know that there's going to be similarities, but make it meaningful for y'all in your community. Make it resonate. Like if I took that to anybody in the community you serve and said, "Hey, does this ring true?" They should be able to say yes. And yeah, after we do that, we'll get all that. There'll be a budget form to fill out, a budget justification, and just to go back a little bit, when we release the RFA, we will ask for letters of intent, and then we will provide a training to all those who submitted a letter of intent. And only those who submitted a letter of intent are able to apply. We have found that it makes it easier on our end to kind of put a box around the number of people that are going to be applying early on, and then we can work much more closely with all of them collectively. And I see Karen asked a question: is RFA going to be open to agencies besides community colleges? Yes, 100%. It is open to universities, community colleges, nonprofits, churches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is fairly wide open, not private sector. That's like our big restriction. But the gas and sip down the road is not going to get a grant from us. But yeah, that's kind of the structure of what we'll be putting out and what we'll be looking for coming back in. And honestly, there may, if there's questions after like the training, then we will answer them. But of course, we'll share the question and answers with all the people that submitted the letter of intent. Because if you have a question, then 5 other people probably have the same question. Does that address what you were looking for?
Thank you, Scott. Dr. Butler and I also spoke at length before this training about the next steps and how going a little deeper and what it's going to look like and how you might accomplish an application. I will say from my experience, from the Wake Tech experience, what Scott's saying about the training is accurate and it makes things much more straightforward. And it's not long. That is the other piece of it. It's not an extensive essay that you're providing. As Scott said, he doesn't want to read, 5 pages of text to get to the heart of what is going on and what your plans might be. But Dr. Butler and I did discuss some of the deeper aspects of this. And if, you have questions about that, I certainly would remain open to it. I know Dr. Butler had said the same. So there, of course, is the next level to go to.
And if anybody has any questions or wants some follow-up answers, then I'm, just shoot me an email. Might not respond quickly, but I will respond.
Dan, do you have any thoughts to add about the providers that are here joining us?
No.
Okay. Fair.
I recognize most of the names. We have Rowan Cabarrus and Randolph, Alamance, and they mentioned Burlington. Does Alamance have the grant? Alamance Community College. And April Root is pointing out that I left out Central Piedmont. Hi, April. And James Mitchell, who I heard recently is at Fayetteville now.
So,
South.
Hi, this is Jolima from Alamance Community College. We have been working together with the local refugee associations in the area, and as you all know, there have been some relocations because of the crisis we're going through. So we want to consider exploring ideas. We really believe in collaboration when it comes to working with community folks, and so the refugee population benefits so much from that collaboration. Whether it is to consider this funding and this grant, I think it's a great idea. But also, in addition to collaborating with local partners, I think that creates the magic of what we're looking for, both sustainability, holistic approach when it comes to this particular population, and more than that, connecting them with a bigger integration, both socially and culturally. So as you have explained, the grant can go up to 2 years probably. So again, we always have to think, okay, how can we make this meaningful? But more than that, developing this mindset and changing culture as we continue developing these initiatives. So we are exploring these ideas, and the meeting has been successful in giving us some of that background that we need to know.
And I just want to compliment Alamance County. When resettlement started there in larger numbers, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there were definitely some hiccups early on or around communication patterns and everything. And I think from my discussions with folks is that Alamance County has a very tight knit, really good group of people doing stuff on the ground that involves all the different partners. And the resettlement agencies, when they came in, did not necessarily recognize that. And so there was a little bit of hiccups, but then once the connections came together, there was a lot of meetings. It is one of the really good places for us to see resettlement, because there is, to Ms. Vargas' point, like a lot of holistic connectivity made between this agency, that agency, this organization, that organization, to ensure that an individual can access and figure out how to access as many services and supports as possible.
Correct. So we have in Alamance, there is something interesting happening. There are over 1,000 agencies working individually, and I'm talking about not-for-profits. So although there are many resources, we are being challenged by silos. And so there are several initiatives happening within Alamance. One of them is being Impact Alamance. There is an amazing initiative. I have been part of that for 3 years, almost 4 years, called For Alamance Initiative, where we're recognizing and creating voices in certain different areas: youth, wellness, faith, bridging, narrative, and art. So again, when the word community is in our title, none of us should be able to get away with doing this work without being community involved. And I'm very critical of what I just said. I find that CCR within Alamance is well known within Alamance because CCR really is community based, but we realize that it's not the same everywhere else. So for my colleagues out there, is the realization that community goes in our title is not just a coincidence. We're supposed to be community oriented in everything we do. And I think that's what CCR in Alamance is successful. And again, it never ends. It's like ongoing, continuous work, but we'll do our best to be everywhere we can and create that mindset in our workers, as well as our teachers and students. So I worked with refugees back in Canada before I moved to the US. So that nothing changes. It's pretty much the same idea of how do we create this connection in a logistic, strategic way, rather than hoping for the best. And so by having these strategies in every level, I think we're able to accomplish a social and cultural integration, which is what we want for our newcomers. So yeah, thank you for your words.
Yeah.
And she's telling the truth. Alamance, that group is really well connected with their community.
Mhm.
April, you turned your camera on. Did you want to say so? Oh, you have your hand raised too.
I do, Dan. So when we had refugee here in Mecklenburg, I was not overseeing it. And then we went through a huge reorg. I don't know the reason for the loss of the contract at that time. That's how we termed it. However, I was interested in coming back into this discussion. I know we absorbed a lot of our refugee and they're still part of our ESL population under 231 grant, but I was interested in this because I know the need is still out there and I just wanted to know how to get it back started. I have ESL under my umbrella with a whole new team. And there are things that I'm trying to bring back that we've had here through the years, like the refugee contract, family literacy, workplace literacy, and just going back and reconnecting to what I call our roots. And so I'm here to listen because I was not overseeing the contract at that time. That entire team is gone. So I'm just interested in really trying to gauge the needs assessment here, if we're able to kind of reconnect to this grant. And like I said, we have a lot of refugee within our ESL population under our 231, but this is additional resources to help. And I know we are fully involved in community involvement here in Mecklenburg, and we have the resettlement agencies we're working with. So definitely think we can identify a need. I'm just here to listen today, though.
Well, I, of course, will not go into details about the former grant, but yes, 100%, that's not going to negatively impact a current application. And yes, Charlotte is one of those Mecklenburg is one of those interesting places. And the fact that there are 2 resettlement agencies and then a lot of secondary providers that do a lot of stuff, and everybody does some of the same stuff, some of the different stuff, but making it all work together. And I think also one of the things we've noticed is that because it is a large area geographically. I mean, just looking at Charlotte is very sprawly and it goes really far out. So we see that people go to the places that are near them, and there are gaps within the Charlotte metro area that we're like, oh, we've got people here and here, but we have no providers that really get into these neighborhoods. So knowing that y'all are there, we would love to have y'all apply and look at what we can do, and working with Carolina Refugee, Catholic, International House, Refugee Support Services, etc. Oh, and our bridge.
I appreciate it. And I want to ditto on what she was saying what the rep from Alamance was saying. Yeah, I definitely see silos since it's went back under my structure, and turf wars, because when I mentioned refugee people in a meeting with International Coalition, it's kind of like, no, we've got this doing this at this agency. And I'm like, we offer classes already. We have refugees in our classes. We had the contract for a long time. I think we should go after it. So definitely will help work with you all to navigate through that, because I don't know all the history, not involved, but I do see a need. And that's what I'm about. And we had it for a long time, and we still have population. So
Yeah,
love to
I
tap
can
into the
definitely set up a
resources.
time to talk to you later if you want
Thank
to.
you. Appreciate that.
Do that.
I would also add on to the community part. As a provider, we meet regularly as part of the requirements of our grant. And we have become more and more connected as time has passed and, current circumstances being what they are. The connections have expanded our capacity to help do the work that Scott's talking about, the holistic piece. Other providers that have grants or other monies that can serve populations in ways that we cannot. And so we become part of the ecosystem as folks, yes, we provide these services, but for those that we don't, we're now very connected to a real variety of people, both here in the Triangle and across the state. So for what it's worth, you will get more and more connected as a provider, certainly to see what is in your ecosystem beyond the research that you'll do to apply.
And I want to piggyback on that right quick, because I think there's an interesting thing that's happened in the past, let's say 3 years, is that it's typically been referrals have been majority one way from the resettlement agencies to Wake Tech. But in the past 3 years, we have seen alternative pathways of arrival. So people are not necessarily coming through a resettlement agency. And for those populations, a lot of times Wake Tech was the first point of contact, or the school system, or these various entities that is not the refugee resettlement agency. And so during the height of Ukrainian resettlement in North Carolina, I know that it completely flipped, and it was Wake Tech referring people to the local agencies at that time for all the other sets of services they can do. And that's an incredibly important part, because we have refugees that come through our resettlement agencies, but then we have lots of populations that do not automatically have that connection. And then we also have secondary migrants that may have been resettled in New York, but then they wanted to move to North Carolina, so they moved here and they don't have those connections. Knowing that there's folks out there in the communities that go, okay, well, we can do this, but we know these 5 other organizations that can do these things as well. That is incredibly important in this work, in this area of work. So we appreciate that about the community colleges as well, is the community part. Because to your point, that is I feel like one of the main benefits, along with the education, is building that sense of community.
I'd also encourage you to think about the micro and the macro. On a micro level, the folks that come here and go to class create communities of 30 in their classes. They get together, they connect with people of their culture, they connect with people of other cultures. They create a support system for themselves that might not otherwise exist. And on a macro level, getting connected as a college to your community and understanding what the other providers can do for your students is amazing. I mean, there's certainly, this is one of Scott's favorite stories. We had 2 students who also happened to have family members, totally unrelated, totally different folks, come to us with deaf and hard of hearing folks, and they were seeking connection, seeking guidance, seeking supports, but they weren't really sure how to get those services. And so those siblings were able to come to us. Through Scott, we were able to connect them to the office at the HHS, which now in turn is providing services in the home, bringing folks out into groups, teaching American Sign Language from, another country's sign language and getting translators. We certainly could not provide that, and we could not have provided that support to that family, or those two families rather, without this connection. And that it's two people, but it's also two families, and those two families are large families, and their outreach into the community and their ability to say, oh my gosh, the goodwill that's been extended to them, it goes a long way.
And with that story, I think one of the things that we also benefited from is that the division here at DHHS got a little bit of an education as well, because they had not had to engage that much with different sign language and different country sign language. And so I think it was a opportunity on our end as well to learn that. And I always say, like, if somebody comes in again, we know what to do. Like, we put that in our back pocket. If it ever pops up again, then we know what to do. And I actually dropped an article that just came out a few days ago in the chat. It's about an Iranian refugee who arrived in, I think, 2014. And he is now in his PhD program, but he's going to be one of the speakers at Durham Tech commencement. So really good success story of what we can see and what can happen, because when we think about success, we're obviously going to be looking at short-term success, but also we look at like what's going to be going on in 20 minutes or 20 years. Sorry. I don't know why I said minutes.
Scott, I don't know if you know this, but we have a student graduating from Wake Tech that came through USCRI. We're in the process of understanding the situation a little bit better, but we believe that this program, ESL, served the person's parents, and they were able to get in with USCRI and Ruth Mufendeza, and the partnership and the collaboration and the talking and the requirements and the residency determination, all those things came together. And so we're trying to find out more about this young person, but that's another really incredible success story.
Yeah, it is definitely doing this work, and I was doing similar work before I was doing it in North Carolina. And y'all know this too. There are stories that you collect through the years that encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, even when it's, not fun on a particular day.
Karen put a link to the streaming if you want to watch the Durham Tech commencement, hear him speak. And Karen Abel is in charge of the ESL. She's director of ESL at Durham Tech. So I wondered if he was in our classes. She said no.
I do know that he came through the resettlement agency I used to run. I do not remember him as a 16-year-old, but
Am I still showing? I'm showing this,
Yeah.
the screen. I put this up so that you could see their email addresses if you wanted to reach out to Scott or Chanell or Lisa. And I think that we're done. Those are some great questions. Thank you to Scott and Chanell and Lisa, and to all of you for attending today. This will be put up in the PD archive sometime next week, where you will also be able to get the PowerPoint if you would like a copy of that. So have a great, it's almost weekend. Have a great Thursday night.
Happy early May Day.
Yeah, happy early May Day. It's tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you all.